Okay. Well, you better should start now. And is the mic working? Perfect. So welcome everybody. This is the Hague Colin. um, Actually, I don't know if everybody will get the gag here because we have such a young audience, both here in The Hague also, as well as online. But I decided to do this because this is the very first time that together with the Euclid network, we are broadcasting live for WSPD. And for the very first time, we have all of the speakers in the same room. So it's quite exciting for us. So the topic today is the project Buy Social Europe B2B. And I have here, as you can see, a fantastic lineup of speakers. Everybody is an absolute expert in their own fields. And I think that we should start, and I will make this easier for me by asking each one of you that you introduce yourself just briefly before we start with the questions. So, Colin, go on, please.
Good afternoon, everybody, and online as well. Great to be part of the World Sustainable Procurement Day today. My name's Colin Downie. I'm the Sales and Partnership Director at the WildHearts Group. We're one of the largest business-to-business social enterprises in the UK. So we sell product and services to our customers like Downie at Zurich and SAP and many other names that you'll recognise. And then we use all of that profit for our social mission. So I've been involved in the business since day one. So very much looking forward to try and talk about the challenges of social procurement, how we balance both our social impact and our business requirements, and how we meet the objectives of both impact and sustainability at the same time.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Alexandra Vanderpoorten. I head up corporate social responsibility at SAP. I've been in this role for a few years now. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. It's a real pleasure to be with you here in the room, but also to everybody online. Actually, I'm really excited about this panel because it's very, very rare that I sit on a panel on biosocial and social procurement live with people face to face. It's usually on Zoom, and it's just really nice to be able to do this live and on site.
Yes, hello. My name is Wieteke Dupain. I'm the CEO of Euclid Network, the European Social Enterprise Network, and we're hosting this summit for around 200 people here who are here live and in person in The Hague, in a beautiful building, Titan. And also The Hague is an impact city, so they're very much caring about social enterprise and they really built that ecosystem there. And Euclid Network, we're in the Buy Social Europe B2B project a coordinator. We have a strategic partnership with the Commission and also do a lot of projects where we have multiple partners, build consortia and apply to projects. And the Buy Social Europe B2B project is one that the Commission commissioned, and we were very much lucky to be one of the projects that won this as well. So now we're sitting here with the partners in it, and I'll tell a little bit more later.
Hi everybody, I'm Charlie Wigglesworth. I'm the Deputy CEO at Social Enterprise UK and also the Managing Director at Telos. I joined Social Enterprise UK 12 years ago and have been very involved since the start in the Bisocial programme and particularly in B2B procurement, and set up Telos at the end of last year to look at how we do that on a more global basis. And I'll tell you more later. Looking forward to it.
Hello, good morning. My name is Karel Vanderpoorten. I work for the European Commission DG GROW. I'm Policy Officer Social Economy. And as Wieteke already highlighted, we are one of the drivers in the Commission to support the biosocial movement, sustainable public procurement, but also private procurement. And I'm happy to tell you all about it later.
So as I said before, this is the first time that we are broadcasting. We are doing this together between the Euclid Network Impact Summit and the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, WSPD, or World Sustainable Procurement Day, that we celebrate every year on March 21st. A few practicalities. We have this hybrid model, so when we finish, there will be a Q&A. So we're going to have a mic in the room for you if you want to ask any one of us. And also for those attending online, we will get your questions if you go and use the chat function streamed here to me as well. So I'll pick some of the questions and raise to everybody. Right. So when we talk about social impact, I think that it's absolutely needed that we start with those that are delivering the impact. And for me, these are the real heroes here. We can, I think, that spend a lot of time talking about how we can help, but it's the social enterprise at the end of the day that are on the field with their work, with their people, creating the social impact. So, Colin, I would like to start with you. So, in your experience, how has it been? I mean, from the start of WildHearts, how do you deliver this mission? And also perhaps a bonus question, as you mentioned, from a procurement engagement perspective, how has it been for you?
We have been around for about 15 years, and I would say the procurement landscape has changed dramatically in that time. The labels of social enterprise, social procurement, buy social, they didn't exist historically. It's very much CSR focused, and we would be pushed towards CSR. But the reality is social enterprises want trade. And despite how often we would ask and say, no, I need to speak to your buyers and your procurement team, we would be directed towards CSR and then try and get CSR to introduce us back to procurement. So there's a lot of passion required, a lot of hard work. You know, to be clear, social enterprises don't want donations generally. They don't. If you're relying on donations as social enterprise, there's something wrong with your business model, full stop. You should be trading, but you know, you need to win business and you need to have procurement. So I think that one of the biggest lessons I learned originally was, you know, we could sell the products and services that our customers needed, but they had good suppliers in place, and any business is successful with good suppliers. So you've got no rights to anyone's business just because you've got a different way of telling a story. And quite honestly, the customer doesn't need to care about your social impact. They might quite like the business model, but you don't need to inspire them that because you're focused on whether, you know, helping autistic people back into the labour market or, you know, helping vulnerable children in whatever situation. They really don't have to care. Procurement is all around products, services, good quality products and the right pricing. And if you get that bit right, then you can talk about the social stuff and you can inspire people about what you'll do with the profit. So you can't focus too much on the social stuff. You can't focus too much on the business stuff. And there's this constant competition between the two outcomes. So I think the early years were very difficult, but you can't deliver any impact in life if you've got customers. So you have to win business. You have to make money. But then the thing that we were maybe slightly naive to in the early days was the money leaves the business. And once it leaves the business, it's doing its brilliant social impact stuff. And then you're kind of back to not quite square one, but getting the balance between how much money had to leave the business and how much had to be retained to help us develop more business next year was quite difficult. Having enough people and resources to be able to go and capture business is another challenge, you know, filling out tender documents and speaking to people whilst you're running a business and dealing with margin and dealing with suppliers. You know, it's complicated. What I love about it, though, is the challenge is centered around impact and you're always helping people. So whether it's extra nights or the boring spreadsheets or the phone calls, there's a guiding sort of impact outcome that drives all the decisions. And that feeling has never left me. And it's one that I hope inspires lots more people to start social businesses, whether that's an environmental outcome that they want to achieve or a personal and sort of human impact that they want to achieve.
Thank you, Colin. Wieteke, I would like to go to you next now. I mean, we are all here involved in the Buy Social Europe B2B project. Could you give us an overview of what the project is, timelines, objectives, etc. And more importantly, probably, how, if people want to participate, how can they do that?
Yes, thank you, Jaime. And I'm, of course, then also very, very honored to be here on stage with all of you and that you actually decided to be part of the project and the project application. I still remember, if we're talking about timelines, that was a steep timeline, right? And we were quite ambitious. We had a movement already. I mean, we're talking here with the Buy Social movement. for over a decade. I mean, we're talking here with the Social Enterprise World Forum, with the Winter Olympics in 2010, starting kind of a movement around this concept of how do you do procurement for Olympics and then bringing it to that stage. And of course, the bi-social concept became very popular when Social Enterprise UK did the campaign on bi-social. And I think it's, well, a big success and achievement that terminology like bi-social is now so ingrained in the whole market, and that it really means something, that it's buying from social enterprise, social procurement movement. So in that part, if we then look at bringing together all these stakeholders, we're already working for many years, and this is also under the leadership and thought leadership of SAP and Alexandra with the CSR team, where it did start, or does start to a certain extent in this movement, support organizations and social enterprise to actually build these relationships and to also make a business sense in a way. So that was already a decade going on. This fantastic then support also where the Commission created like a European Union, like social economy action plan. There's like pathways to a transition to a more socially inclusive and sustainable world with transition pathways for green, for digital as well, from DG Grow, DG Employment. And them having as well the bold step maybe, or I don't know if it's bold, we can maybe hear from Karel, because they have a lot of experience and projects already for a long time with public procurement, socially responsible public procurement. We heard it earlier in the session today, where one of these long-term projects was as well shared. But this is kind of also with the B2B market. Now a project. So we're one of the 5 projects. We also have very dear other EU level networks like Euclid Network, Reuse, for example, Circular Enterprises, ENSI, it's Work Integration Social Enterprises. They also run projects. And if we then look at the Bi-Social Europe B2B, it's a multi-stakeholder platform. And that is, I think, really unique. And it's also ambitious because it has 23 partners globally and in Europe. In 17 markets, we're trying to build like bi-social markets and ecosystem development. That's tough. So very like so short on some of the things that we're doing, like timelines are, we had a meet to buyer guide for events. Like we have experience, we're very experienced partners, over a decade of experience, and they put all their best practices in there. And then we have a lot of new markets or players where they have never done bi-social in their country. So if it's around Portugal or it's around Germany or France, some are more experienced and less experienced. I think the most experienced UK, most success we've seen so far. So Charlie as well with his knowledge from Social Enterprise UK, transferring that then to new markets. That model is core of the business of what we do in the project. Yeah.
And if people want to contribute, participate, how can they do? Is there, I don't know, a website or something that people can follow?
Yes. Bi-Social Europe B2B.eu. If you go there, you can register and we'll absolutely make sure that you get connected to any of the projects, trainings, mentoring, coaching programs, any events, meet the buyer events, pitching in each one of the 17 countries in Europe. And you'll just also receive the newsletters going forward. Yeah.
And I wanted to perhaps go back to something that you said that I think that it's absolutely important to be repeated here, is the learning effect. So yes, SE UK probably started, I don't know, a decade ago or even more, but instead of having all of the local intermediaries or the countries individually having to go through that path, the possibility now to have 23 members, partners, as you said, learning from each other, sharing, building capabilities, I think, together. This will hopefully expedite this whole movement quite a lot. So thank you. Karel, perhaps you. So the European Commission is one of the 2 parties co-funding the initiative. So what is it that makes this relevant for the Commission, and what are your expectations, perhaps?
Let me first go maybe also 10 years back in time with the Social Business Initiative, the first real initiative taken at European level to support social enterprises. And already there it was very strongly stipulated that we should support access to markets. And access to markets is like a general phrase, but what does that mean? That we need to foster more collaboration between social enterprises and mainstream enterprises or traditional. I don't really like those type of terminology, but okay, we have to use it because everybody recognizes it as such. But also with public buyers. The problem was at that time there was so much pressure, so much interest on the public procurement because of course social enterprise, social economy by extension have a natural relationship with the public authorities. There are a lot of providing a lot of services. They're a very traditionally formed relationship, but not so much on this private. But still, this changed in 2018 when we did a major study on how to bring closer these two worlds, how to facilitate collaboration, but not only on trade, but just identifying the modes of collaboration. I can certainly recommend you to have a look at this study. Don't read it entirely because it's over 400 pages, but the case studies, the thematic case studies, the 15 thematic case studies show very different modes of collaboration. And one of the outcomes was there that indeed this B2B dimension, this trade dimension, I'm very happy that the colleague mentioned it already, this equal partnership on economic terms, this is the only way to have sustainable relationships. Because there are several degrees of collaboration that were identified, and the first one was more of philanthropy. We will do a one-shot donation, which is very good for our PR, etc. Nothing against that, but that does not sustain over time. The second is a more transactional, where you really are an equal economic partner as a company towards a social enterprise, sometimes even combination in consortia, because the matter of scale is very often a problem. That was also very clearly identified in the study, but it doesn't stop there, and that's where it gets more interesting. When you establish relationships between social enterprise and mainstream companies, after a while they are getting more interested in what's actually behind this business model. What are the mission, the drivers, and how do they deliver on this in terms of ecological impact, in terms of social impact. Sometimes the social impact, as you described, is outside the company. So you use your profit to generate a social impact outside the company, but sometimes it's also, and most of the time, it's included in the company, for example, by employing people with disabilities, for example, by conducting specific eco-design, new products, new services. And this is also an asset for the trading partner to get intelligence on that, to scale those products, to scale those services, but also the business model behind. Look at the sharing economy, how this boomed. This was all rooted in the social economy, and it was picked up by many mainstream providers. Unfortunately, the values were also sometimes gone. So that's a discussion that needs to be developed within this partnership. Over time, and that is the most unique version, and we didn't find so many examples, I will be honest about it, you have a fully integrated cooperation where companies almost converge towards each other, where there is so much collaboration that they, for example, have joint R&D, that they exchange employees, that they have a joint HR policy developed, for example, in the world of work integration social enterprise. So all these things are described, and this is why we found so much interest. There is so much more potential to discover there. And of course, today we see that sustainability matters in any corporate is more present, and social enterprises can bring the intelligence, can bring the practices towards those businesses. But again, it should be on equal partnerships, otherwise it's not possible. Then we come to the current actions. We do everything on public procurement, you heard it this morning, but now it's on private. What do we need? What are the preconditions to make social enterprises ready to engage in those relationships? Sometimes it's better not to do it. If they are not ready, because you burn the bridge and you can never go back. A corporate will do it once, but if you don't deliver the quality or there is no professional relationship established, they say, okay, but we are just losing time. We did it once for good. It's good for our PR, but never again. So it's also a matter of helping and supporting social enterprises in this trade readiness in terms of scale, capacity, standards, certification. All these things should be identified. And then what we especially want to provoke or to get integrated in these type of projects is also the knowledge in organizations like Euclid and other national partners to identify the most interesting sectors, because sometimes there is just a competitive disadvantage. It's just not possible to deliver on the right price given the conditions that are present in an organization. If you're employing people with disabilities, sometimes this has a firm consequence on your productivity. It's just not possible to act in a certain service or to provide a certain product at a certain price, so then don't do it. But we need to identify, based on sectors, on activity, on type of social enterprise, what is feasible. and not just shoot in the wild, well, shall we collaborate, what can we do, but that is very much the knowledge that needs to be more present in the supporting federations nationally. And the last thing I want to emphasize, and that's also something that came out of this 2018 study, and you actually also highlighted in some way to that, talk to the right people. Not only formally, but also informally. Why are these social enterprises not engaged in chambers of commerce, in sectoral federations of actually their close peers? Still in many countries we see they are not talking to each other at all. And that is what we should facilitate thanks to projects like this, that these informal networks are there, not at the level of HR, not at the level of CSR, PR, these are all very relevant, but also the ones who eventually decide should be convinced about the added value. And that is where they also should be present. And it was super obvious in this, everybody said, actually it started with an informal contact. We started to discuss what the social enterprises are doing. There was a triggered attention. There was a further research if their potential collaboration could be established. Then it went to the sales, to the procurement. They said, no, it's not possible. Okay, what should we do to make it happen? And then that way you also improve the professionalization, the capacity of social enterprise. That's like a very natural cycle that we have observed many times. So these are the drivers why the Commission thinks it's important to push, and what we also observe as things, challenges, hurdles, barriers that are still existing. Projects like this, we really hope that it can give this push, but still it's the market that should play. We don't want to intervene in the market. We don't want to decide you should collaborate with that company, because it's not working like that. It's pure a facilitation of more access to markets, and that's what we hope to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. What can I say? I think that's absolutely needed as well. I think that the need here, Alex, SAP, one thing that I do appreciate quite a lot is that for me, SAP is one of the few companies that they are addressing in the ESG agenda, the E, the G, but also the S. So I would like to invite you to explain how you're doing this, and why is this initiative to the private sector perhaps important, and how does this align with the business objectives of SAP?
So I think, like so many companies, we've been on a complete journey when it comes to this topic, right? And we've been first exposed to social entrepreneurship in about 2009, 2010. Basically coincides actually also with SAP developing a fairly holistic sustainability strategy at the time. But very honestly, in the first years, I would say probably 7 to 8 years, it was a CSR-driven initiative. It was basically because of the passion of a few who believed that social enterprises played a pivotal role in the world, but could also be instrumental to the private sector and to mainstream enterprises. And I share your sentiment, Karel. I don't like the term, but unfortunately, we have to deal with definitions. I'm sure that a lot of social enterprises also don't want to be called and like being called a social enterprise. So we share the pain. I think there's a few things that really changed. When ESG became more important, when sustainability started to become more important, when the triple bottom line started really become not just a topic of conversations, but businesses really having to look into their business processes, into their business strategy, in how to transform, and not just look at financial performance. I think what we started doing is, so where are those anchor points? Where are those connection points where we can not just do risk mitigation, because unfortunately that's what a lot of mainstream businesses still do when it comes to ESG and sustainability. But how do we actually create positive environmental and social impact? Because by that time, we'd already been working with social enterprises for so long, we knew you don't have to look very far to be able to do that, because a social enterprise has that in their DNA. So we should get the inspiration from them. And then something happened that I think was very pivotal, and that guided the last 5-6 years, I would say, of our social enterprise strategy. We were exposed to the topic of procurement through partners, and these partners are Social Enterprise UK and Social Enterprise World Forum in 2017, I would say. So it wasn't because we suddenly realized, oh, this is a great topic. It was our partners that were telling us, look, this is really important, and you can play an important role in this. In the beginning, it was a business approach, purely a business approach, where we were only looking at, okay, so how do we now how do we divert our procurement spend towards social enterprises? And there was a disconnect between procurement and CSR. And when we started seeing that, we jumped in, we said, no, hold on. How do we bring those worlds closer together? How do we, from a CSR perspective, enable what procurement is trying to achieve and vice versa? And we started to work hand in hand. So basically what that has led to is a very, I would say, pretty multi-layered social enterprise strategy within the company where lots of different functions are engaged: marketing, HR, procurement, product development, CSR, and we basically working hand in hand to integrate social enterprises into global supply chains. That means we invest in ecosystem building, infrastructure building, creating networks. It means we look into how our SAP technology can enable social enterprises to be flagged and tagged in B2B marketplaces, how we can increase visibility for social enterprises through SAP technology. And it also means continuing to accelerate and scale capacity building for social enterprises to make them trading ready.
Thank you, Alex. It would be great if we could have more companies also doing this, but absolutely fine. Charlie, last but not least, the role of the intermediary and Telos, because Telos is a very new approach, I think. So it's the first time that I see an European-wide initiative, or a coverage perhaps. Can you explain everybody here what is the role of the intermediary and specifically what you want to achieve by setting up Telos?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I need to go back slightly. So people have mentioned already Social Enterprise UK and our role in this. I still work for Social Enterprise UK as well, as my job title suggests. So back in 2012, which is when I joined SUK, we ran the Bisocial campaign and created this brand just for one summer to help social enterprises buy from each other, actually, initially. And got a lot of interest and traction from across our corporate partners, mainly through CSR functions, from a whole range of different people. And we started looking at how could we build a more dedicated program to act as that bridge between corporate buyers who were looking to spend more money with social enterprises and the social enterprise sector and our understanding of where that operated and how that worked. And we were interested in that because our members wanted us to do it and because the scale of the opportunity is that much bigger. So the average FTSE 100 company spends about £10 million on CSR and about 4 billion on procurement. So the scale of the opportunity there is that much greater, and we could help to bridge that through our data, our knowledge, our understanding, to help introduce suppliers like Colin and WildHearts, who are one of our early kind of successes in that scale, to make that happen. We launched the Bisocial Corporate Challenge, which is our flagship program in the UK in 2016. Zurich were one of the first 7 partners to be involved in that. I think it's fair to say some of those 7 were there with a bit of apprehension about how that would work. I think the landscape has changed a lot. Like, procurement is in a very, very different place. Things like the SPP and the way that kind of the narrative is moving has really changed, as Colin mentioned. Since 2016 to today, we've now got over 30 partners on that program. They've spent over 400 million euros with social enterprises. That's created over 3,500 jobs for those furthest from the labour market. We've seen over 30 or 40 million euros reinvested into the good causes and programs and activities that those social enterprises do. And from a quality and economic perspective, again, to pick up on Colin's point, 95% of those contracts have been delivered at a higher quality or equal to the previous incumbent, over 90% equal on price as well. So across that 400 million euros, we can demonstrate that social enterprises can be competitive and can win contracts. And we've been able to increase the scale of the social enterprises by doing that. So When we started, we didn't have any social enterprises that were winning kind of 1 million plus contracts. We had 23 last year that were doing that. So we're starting to see that scale emerge from stimulating the demand side. Going back to 2021, having just jumped forward to today, we started speaking to some of those 30 partners, including SAP and Zurich, who are global businesses, who said to us, look, this is great in the UK, but we're a global business. Actually carving out what we spend in the UK is a problem. We want to look at this across EMEA or across Europe or across the region that we spend within. And so we launched a pilot program of Biosocial Europe in 2021 with 6 partners to look at how could we start to build connections, working very closely with the Euclid network and with partners in the Netherlands, Germany, Ireland and Switzerland initially, to look at how could we build that out. And the intention from the Social Enterprise UK board, and because of a small thing called Brexit, we don't really want to talk about that, is that we would do that as a separate brand and entity that would look to specifically drive social procurement on a global basis. And that's why it's called Telos. That's why the idea is that it will focus on thought leadership and development of this idea of positive impact through procurement alongside the kind of catalytic impacts of working with social enterprises. And the ambition from a program perspective of how we're looking to take Biosocial Europe forward has 2 sides to it, really. I think one is, so firstly, we're explicitly focused on working with global businesses that have a global footprint in how they spend. And we want to help them to navigate what is a fairly complex environment in terms of national intermediaries. I think Karel made the point around different networks within, say, work integration, social cooperatives, social enterprises, and so on across the social economy. We want to make that as simple as possible for a corporate to engage just through us in order to reach these suppliers on the ground that they can do business with. And we want to leverage our knowledge and expertise from the last 10 years of understanding how procurement works, how we engage with suppliers, how we help to look at data, how we can create the business case to drive to activity within businesses to help to stimulate that demand side. And we want to make it appear, even though it might not always be, as simple as possible for them to engage across Europe on the ground, with a focus particularly on those 4 countries, but increasingly moving out. And then on the social enterprise side and on the national intermediary side, we're really focused, to your point earlier, on how do we help intermediaries get there quicker. So we want to use the experience that we've had over the past 10 years, some good, some bad, some of the mistakes that we made as well, to really support the work that Euclid are doing, the work that other networks are doing, to help to drive, because that's in the interest of everybody. Like the more that those networks develop to be able to do this, we can create that kind of symbiotic approach where we can push from a kind of top-down way of stimulating demand from big global businesses, but we can also support that bottom-up growth of intermediaries that will help to create thriving systems within countries as well as across Europe. Yeah, and that's
Great.
it. Yeah.
No, great. And I would like to switch heads now, probably, and talk to all of the procurement professionals that we have attending online or here in the room. I completely agree, and I think that the role of the intermediary is heavily underestimated in this whole equation. Yeah, because for us, from the procurement perspective, we don't know where many of the social enterprises are. Yeah, so we need definitely someone that will say, based on your spend profile, based on your industry, we believe that these companies can become partners, can become suppliers of you, and this will save us a lot of time. Yeah, so it's absolutely needed. I hope that really we see that progress there. We started at Zurich now, perhaps 8 years ago, I think, with our, well, it was Biosocial Corporate Challenge in the UK. And since then, it's amazing to see how many local intermediaries as well we have been working on. So it's absolutely the right thing. There are 2 things as well that I wanted to address, again, to the procurement professionals. Those are perhaps, if you want, takeaways from my side. One, we have discussed here about, you know, the role of HR or CSR or procurement. In my view, the leadership, the drive for this must come from procurement. Yeah, we either manage or we at least influence trillions of dollars of spend in our companies. So if we can redirect a very small percentage of that spend to social enterprises, the impact that we can create without paying more, I'll come to this later perhaps, but it's significant. Yeah, it's significant. A small percentage of trillions, it's a huge volume that will create the social impact or the environmental impact, depending on the mission of the social enterprise that we are aiming for. Yeah, and then now, because I tapped into this, I think that the second takeaway, let's repeat once more. There are some myths on social enterprises that, in my experience, I haven't seen. One of them is that they are not cost competitive. That's absolutely not the case. I have one example here sitting next to me. We do work with WildHearts in 2 countries. And that's the entry point, yeah. So our strategy, if you wanna say it like this, is to give the social enterprise the opportunity to compete on equal terms. They will prove their value, their capabilities, and then from there, you will see a lot of additional value of the relationship. It can be on your talent strategy, it can be on innovation, it can be on so many different things. So let's be clear, we are not doing charity, we are not donating money. What we need to consider is social enterprises. They are a different type of supplier, a supplier that will provide you the services or the goods that you have to buy anyway, but on top of that, there will be a huge social or environmental impact that can be created. Yeah. We will have plenty of time for Q&A, and that's very good. But before we go there, are there any messages, I think that things that you would like people to take away from your experience for so many years working on this field? Colin.
If you don't mind me jumping in, and it was a thought that, Karel, you had. In my early days, we were turning over about £1 million, and we were trying to win the Royal Bank of Scotland's business, and it sort of came out in the wash that they were spending about £20 million on the products and services we sold. But we were confident we could do what they needed to do, but in this element of risk and money, there was no chance of us winning that business. They were very polite to us, they were very careful with managing my expectations. But quite quickly, they were like, well, how else can we help? You know, they were like, well, we could, this one's not under contract, and you could do this for us, and you could do this for us. And it's to your point of having an equal relationship in social procurement. I think you can just ask any question you want. People are human. They kind of want to help because the social mission will benefit from that help. And I got mentored by a procurement professional who was a CIPS, Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply, was his qualification. So he taught me all about contract life cycles, about the reliance on suppliers, how you manage risk, how you do negotiations. So then I knew what procurement people were thinking within 2 months. That guy has moved jobs 4 times, and each one of those companies has been a customer over the years. Okay, so there's a relationship that goes back all these years because he's now wedded to driving social innovations, and he's used his association with us as a way for part of his job interviews and his ability to raise his profile, and I think that's wonderful. I've sat with procurement people many times going, can you sell me cars? Can you sell me mobile phones? Can you do law? Can you do this? And you know, you've got this incredible wealth of knowledge of where your social business should be going next to tap into various products and services. So we started with a stationery company, but then very quickly our customers are spending 4 to 7 times as much on printing and print management as they are on office supplies. So, you know, we become a print supplier to lots of our customers, and that allows us to have more conversations rather than going, well, that one's under contract and now we can't speak to you again for 3 years or 5 years. And you understand that big businesses, particularly ones with big brands, multinational brands, have procurement strategies that are locked in for years. So you might not be your time right now, and you might have to, you know, eat a sort of bittersweet pill, keep the conversation going, but before that next contract life cycle, you can sell lots of other things. But I've also, on the other side of things, from the social perspective, talking about innovation and social entrepreneurship. Johnson & Johnson were a big customers for a long time, and we had a big advocate wanting to work with them, loving what we were doing in microfinance in various countries. We ended up the group, the foundation, ended up buying sort of microfinance banks. So we now have 300 colleagues in Zambia, Zimbabwe, and opening up in South Africa next year. That's owned by the group, doing microfinance services with, now taking sort of private direct investment microfinance. And when we started on day one, we'd no impact, no customers, and no clue. And now we've got 300 people in the group and multiple millions in a microfinance fund that's building and attracting institutional investment. But Johnson & Johnson alerted us to a problem with reusable sanitary pads in sub-Saharan Africa, where the statistics are astonishing of girls who are not in school when they've got reusable sanitary pads. But they trusted us as a supplier. Our microfinance network was really powerful, and they were like, well, would you be interested in starting a reusable sanitary pad factory? Would you match fund, would our foundation match fund that? So we've now got a reusable sanitary pad factory in South Africa that's got 7 women in full-time jobs. We've made 212,000 reusable sanitary pad projects, 4 trustees in that country, employ 7 women who were previously on social welfare grants. And so the leap from office supplies to printing to microfinance to sanitary pads is all an incredibly entrepreneurial journey that we've all been on. And I couldn't have done it without procurement people and inspiring CSR people who are all part of that journey. But it does take time, and you need to ask lots of questions, and I think there's loads of humans around the table wanting to help. So procurement's not always just to think about the nuts and the bolts of one contract. There's expertise, there's support, there's connections, you need other people on the other side of the fence to go and take advantage of those opportunities, obviously, but I've got hundreds of examples like this of the weird and wonderful, it is a wonderful journey that you're on all the time, delivering impact and building a business.
I love what you were saying, Colin, because it sort of shows the inspiration and the innovation that is happening if you enter like a true business partnership with each other, right? And you just never know where that leads. Same thing on our end, I mean, we had no idea that we would be sitting here in 2024 and we would have this holistic social enterprise strategy in our company. But actually what I wanted to highlight is, when we talk about social procurement and buy social, we very often talk about it in the setting of multinational and big corporations. And I just want to make a plea for not forgetting about a very, very important part of the private sector, which are SMEs, which I think are going to be absolutely instrumental in scaling social procurement and buy social. So while this is all nice and well, actually sometimes it's harder to develop trading relationships between big corporates and social enterprises because there's scale, there's power imbalance, there's just lots of different things that play into it. And on the corporate side as well, you have layers and layers and layers of a supply chain, right? And tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, and the rest of it. And SME doesn't have that. They're able to in a much more agile fashion make decisions. Decide, not spontaneously, but basically decide, okay, yes, we're going to give this a chance. So I do think that as a movement, we need to invest significantly more in bringing our friends and partners and colleagues from the SME sector into this whole conversation and enabling them to enter trading relationships with social enterprises. So if anyone is out there that's working for an SME in the procurement space, I just want to encourage you to hop on the journey with us and on the train with us.
You know what, Charlie, just one comment, because you tapped on something super important. I think that we in procurement, again, we have to make our processes much more inclusive than what they are today. I completely appreciate if I go to a supplier or prospective supplier and I give them a contract template that is this thick of paper. It's not easy, yeah. But that's for another day, perhaps. Charlie, you have a comment.
Yeah, just briefly on the SME point, absolutely one of the interesting things in the UK is on the back of, so we work with a lot of construction and built environment clients in the UK. They have very big supply chains, 100,000 plus suppliers, and 85% of them are SMEs. So they work locally with small businesses. And we've now been working through them. We have a program called Social Procurement Connect, which is much more about driving that SME-led approach. It's a slightly different tactically approach, but yeah, there's definitely a big demand there, and it is about kind of route to market and how you get there. The comment I was going to make was just on Colin's amazing journey, a weird and wonderful thing. I always learn something new from WildHearts. It is 2 points. I think one from a social enterprise side, I think the point that WildHearts exemplify, I think, is that if you want, and I think there's a huge opportunity in B2B, again, as WildHearts have shown, but if you want to access that, you need to take it seriously and really understand how it works. It's a very difficult thing to do in a light touch or kind of tokenistic way. If it's a small part of what you do, you're not going to get very far because it's hard. It takes a long time. There's a lot of process, bureaucracy, and so on. The flip side of that is that unlike public procurement, where there are lots and lots of rules and lots of transparency, in the nicest possible way, there's less of that in the private sector. And so the ability to say, oh, could you do this as well? Could you do that? Could you expand into that? And for you to say, yeah, we can do that, creates growth and opportunities for you that you won't get as kind of linear a curve in the public sector, where it takes a long time to build that track record and growth and development. And I think that's really interesting. And also the lack of geographic boundaries, again, that WildHearts demonstrate there, that is obviously harder with public procurement. I think on the other side of the fence, from a kind of business and procurement perspective, and again, from what WildHearts have said, not thinking of it in too linear a way about, we buy this, are there any suppliers that sell that are social enterprises? We need to find them. If we can't find them, we can't do anything. Social enterprises are incredibly innovative and incredibly entrepreneurial in how they respond to things. And if you say, could you do this? Having that dialogue, that conversation, that relationship, and as I said, back to the stats that we have now on kind of £1 million plus relationships, those sorts of things, they've not come from suppliers saying, buyers saying, we need this, can you find me a supplier? It's come from building and developing and pulling together those models of what's possible and how do we make it work. Because there's also more effort required on the buyer side to make these things work. It's not just a case of, here's a big directory, we're just going to pick these guys and we're going to work with them and onboard them tomorrow. But again, the benefits of that, I think, are huge on both sides.
Brilliant. I'm conscious of time now. Of course you can. Yeah. Of course.
I just want to make this point that if we look at an ecosystem level, right, you indicated the importance of infrastructure. The organizations that we work with, the support organizations towards social enterprises, are really supporting the social enterprise so they actually can do their business, because there are some market inefficiencies at the moment still that we're trying to figure out with the world and how to solve that. Things like true prices, integrating the real cost, environmental, social governance. And then as Euclid Network, representing around 50 of those national support organizations or incubators, accelerators, or universities, we do see represent 100,000 social enterprises. Then you're not talking about the same social enterprises. So some social enterprises are actually international, multinational. They can compete, they're strong, they can be cost competitive. And it's exactly what Karel says as well. It depends where you are, in which niche and market, how big. Currently, the market inefficiencies at the moment, because we have systemic change initiatives that we need to actually get really to the bottom of being true prices, of having actually some of the externalities priced in or not. And in that perspective, we also have small enterprises. So those 100,000 social enterprises, not the same. So we need to cater to both multinational corporations, because we have some social enterprises, they're ready. They can do this. They can handle this. And maybe some of those cannot handle that, and they actually need to cater to the small, medium enterprise business world, and they will maybe never be the ones that want to cater. So you have different social enterprise and different mainstream enterprise, and they need to find each other. And I think that's also key to offer different programs in this kind of initiative.
All right. Shall we go to questions now? Do we have any questions in the room? Or should we go online for questions? So it's coming up here now. Technology, when it works, is awesome. So let me read it out loud. And this is the easiest part, right? Because I can simply delegate to one of you then. So the first question that I have here, how can we measure impact of our program as buyers beyond simple spend measures? Anyone wants to take this? Charlie, perhaps you, because, yeah.
So in the UK program, I gave a few numbers on employment, profit reinvestment, and so on. There are certain things that you can aggregate at a top level, like job creation, profit reinvestment, and so on. Beneath that, it gets very difficult very quickly to do big aggregate numbers because different business models and different impact models will affect that, because the profit margin the business makes and then how it relates to how much of that you can attribute to different things gets very hard. The good news on the other side of that, so we can do a certain amount on the kind of overall program across the 400 million euros. The other thing is that social enterprises individually, the good ones in the B2B space, have become very, very good at articulating the impact that they have and in providing that back to businesses with their invoice, you know, and saying, thank you for this, here is what you've done with us, and here's how we can articulate it. And I think the other benefit of that is that from a procurement perspective, buyers are endlessly doing supplier questionnaires, surveys, trying to get people to please answer this, please tell me about this, please, and so on. Social enterprises are proactively giving you lots of incredible information about what they do and how they operate, because that's part of their DNA. And that's a really positive thing, I think, in terms of the way that they approach this, in a way that you're trying to drag other suppliers to give you the information that you're after.
I would like to add one thing here. Again, with the procurement hat on, we always talk about money. Yeah, dollars, euros, pounds, whatever. So usually in my experience, and we do that as well, we do measure the spend that we transact through social enterprises. It's not ideal because we are talking about money instead of impact. But if you have to go there because you have to pitch internally, you have to, you know, build that awareness internally, go for it. But ideally, we should be measuring the impact that companies like WildHearts, they do that very, very well. Okay. Number 2. What are the most typical commodities sectors where mainstream enterprises and social enterprise suppliers find social enterprise suppliers to integrate them into their supply chain? So I will take this one to start with, but please, if you want, yeah. In our example, we have office supplies, even corporate training. We have facilities management. You see a lot of social enterprises playing in that field, be it security services, cleaning, what else? Catering, you name it. Marketing as well, events, for example. So those are a few examples from our side. I'm probably forgetting a few others, but just wanted to.
Can I add one?
Sure.
Because I know you will like this one as well, and I know you do that too. It's on the area of skilling and employment. I think that's a very big area where we've seen quite a bit of success. And increasingly, like on the marketing side, media production as well.
Any other one? No? So let me go to number 3. Can I? Yes, of course.
In my humble experience, it's interesting to observe that all the things that you mentioned are not related to the core activity of your company. And that's not a bad thing, it's just an observation. But where it gets again super interesting in when it shifts from landscaping, catering, whatever, to other type of collaboration that is hitting the core of your activity. So your value chain inclusion on your end product, your service, whatever. And that is what we see where the most strongest social enterprises are managing to integrate themselves over time. When I looking, and that's also maybe a type of social economy organization that's more keen because of the activities that are very close, work integration, social enterprises, they are de facto very close to, for example, the SME level. They are suppliers because they are constantly adapting themselves to the market demand to be able to employ people. It's as simple as that. So they have genius engineers, process developers that are adapting the assembly lines when it's hardcore manufacturing towards the demand of the local market. And that is the most successful models where we see that full inclusion in the value chain is managed. It goes even that far that sometimes an SME that requests to social enterprise, could you do the assemblage of this for me? that they just simply say, no, it's not big enough. And so the power model even shifts. They say, I will not take any contract that is not able to perform 100 employees during 1 year, because otherwise it's cost efficient and not interesting for us. So that is, even you observe that in some sectors that this shift is already, that there are such powerful, so important actors in the value chain, and that is of course where the maximum impact can be achieved.
Can I just add something to that? I'm completely with you on that. It's in my opinion, it's an and conversation, right? It shouldn't be an either or, but an and one. One thing that I've observed, SAP has 440,000 customers in every industry. One thing that I've observed is that it's for B2B companies, like SAP is and Zurich is, well, you're both, right? But if you're B2B, it's much harder to look at it from a core competence perspective. But when you're looking at it more from a B2C perspective, the challenge there is that it actually requires business transformation. And if you start there, you might make the entry point so hard and so difficult that the door doesn't even open because of that. So I think it's sort of a fine balancing act. I think that, of course, we would love to see business transformation and we would love to pull the biggest levers. But one of the things that I've learned is that you have to take things step by step sometimes, because otherwise you're going to lose a lot of people on the journey.
You cannot see this, but there is a big reminder here that we are just about to close. So at this point, I do have more questions, but unfortunately we're going to have to wrap up now. So thank you very, very much for your time, for your, I think that wisdom, and for sharing your experience with everybody online and here in the room. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that we are not live anymore. No, I just wanted to say a big thank you to you guys, because everything worked just perfectly. I don't know online.